What is up, thinkers, blinkers, and thousand-year-old blood drinkers? Thanks for sitting down at the messy desk with me this week. Today, we're doing something pretty different. This is something that I'm actually really excited about because it sort of channels a different part of my creative brain that I haven't exercised a little bit in a while. For those of you who don't know, that was my chair. I don't know if you heard that, but I didn't just rip one. I would admit to it if I did, and it would be really stinky, and we would all laugh at that because funny man do a fart, and we all clap. But regardless, I used to write a lot when I was younger, and I sort of fell out of it recently through my sort of experiences with tabletop role-playing games and world building with friends. It's really sort of reignited that passion in me to want to write. And so I pulled up this folder of these games that I had accumulated over the course of the pandemic, hoping to kind of jog that inspiration back then. Of course, as these things often do, I accumulated but then did nothing. Who else can relate? But a lot of these games fall under the category of what are kind of just informally known as journaling RPGs, often solo journaling RPGs. And essentially the gimmick is you have a set of skills or statistics or some sort of mechanism, and you have prompts that you answer in diary form. Most of them say that you can just answer them in your head, but I think the intention is pretty clearly that you should be writing diary entries in some form and creating a living document that you could look back on and enjoy. And for me, I hope it's going to be a great writing exercise in character building and, just storytelling in general. So anyway, last night I finally sat down and started playing the game. And very quickly, I wished that I had recorded that first part because it got interesting very fast. So look, I've been preambling for 3.5 minutes already. I should probably just get into it. Let's talk about the stuff that I already have. There's some basic setup for the game where you create your vampire, essentially. You create your person and you establish some things about them. Number one is just who you are and what period of history you want to set yourself in. I had initially considered putting this in a fantasy world of my own creation and kind of having totally free reign. But then I thought it'd be really cool to learn little tiny tidbits about ancient history and kind of place them in a real world thing and sort of nod my head to real world events and hang out with Alexander the Great, man. I mean, what bi-curious man doesn't want to hang out with the great Alexander, I ask of you? And so, yeah, I am Ambrose, an ancient Macedonian historian. And in my head, he is traveling along with basically Alexander the Great's vanguard, writing a history in real time of their conquest and trek across Persia. And in doing this, he encounters many things and goes through many trials and tribulations that we don't really record up to this point. But he has a bad run-in with a Persian noble who happens to be a vampire, and as vampires do, he rips the heart out of his chest and bites him a bunch and turns him into a vampire, and you know how these things go. So Esfandyar is the Persian noble. I will admit, I googled Persian names, ancienttimes.com. On that, my pronunciation is almost certainly wrong, so please feel free, if you happen to be of Persian descent, or you just know how the name is pronounced, to correct me down below, because high chance I'm getting that wrong. After you determine who your immortal is and how they turn you, you have to determine a mark, and a mark is what visible physical thing has changed about you that the world will see. And so for Ambrose, it is literally, he has a hole in his chest, Iron Man style, just a big gaping hole where his heart used to be. No heart there anymore, but he's still alive because vampire stuff. And his eyes are kind of like tinted red. I don't picture them as like glowing red, big spooky time, except maybe when he's like really thirsty or hungry or whatever vampires get. But I do imagine that they get kind of like the light hits them the right way, right? And it's very creepy and kind of unsettling. After you determine your mark, you determine 3 mortals who you know and who are close to you, relationships that matter. They don't have to be close in terms of they don't have to love you or like you, but they should be 3 people that matter in your life. And so I put Argus, using the archaic spelling, which I thought was really neat, who is my brother and my closest friend. Please pay no attention to the fact that that's struck out. I promise it'll have no relevance later. Berenice, my wife. which is a name I really like. I guess you could say Bernice, but I think Berenice sounds great. And Cassander, who was a Hipparchus, which I learned through my Wikipedia searching, was a commander of basically a 500-man, usually, kind of cavalry company, unit. I don't know what you'd call it. To the surprise of nobody, I'm sure you'll find out that I'm not a military guy. And yes, he doesn't trust me very much. He does not trust my ability to accurately capture what they're doing or portray them in the right light. Probably because he's a brutal guy who does brutal things, and he doesn't want that portrayed wrongly to the populace. But lucky for him, I go all sharp tooth mode, and it doesn't end up mattering. After you determine your mortals, you determine 3 skills based on the people you know and who you are. And so I put that he's charismatic, he's a skilled storyteller because he's a historian, and he's trained on horseback and with spear, just because, he's a dude in the old times. Macedonians were crazy warrior types. I figure he at least knows what he's doing on a horse and with a pokeboy. Past the skills, you generate resources. And resources can be anything from like a knife to a whole army, right? Like if I said I was the commander of some great army, I could have that army as a resource. It's not meant to break the game. It's just meant to be something that you have that you can stand to use or lose. And so I put a strong marriage, a mastercrafted spear, and my loyal host, Ionos. And now this first one that is struck out here, which again, pay no attention to that, doesn't matter at all, not plot relevant, is my brother's trust and help, which I was prompted by the first prompt I did, which I will get to in a minute, to add a resource, which is something that happens regularly in this game. You're prompted to add resources, you're prompted to remove resources, check skills, uncheck skills. And while like a D&D parlance, to check a skill means to like roll a dice, in this game it means to literally put a little next to it, and you have used that skill, manifested that skill, and it is now plot relevant. I will double check that. I believe that's how that works. But here we get to the main meat of what this game is trying to do. Just again, don't read that line there. That probably doesn't matter. You have 5 memories, and in those 5 memories, you can hold, I believe it's 3 experiences each. And every prompt that you write, you have to log it as an experience. And you're kind of trying to group them together in chunks that are related to one another. So for instance, like, I am Ambrose, a Macedonian, not an Macedonian, Danny boy, a Macedonian historian traveling alongside Alexander Great to chronicle his unprecedented empire. Great. If I put in another very basic thing about me, like say there was a prompt that was like, talk about a loved one, and I talked about how cool my wife is and like how like freaking pretty she is, and how much I respect her and love her and like treat her as an equal and shit, like even in BC, you know what I mean? Like I was Ambrose woke, Jesus, I'm sorry. I would put it under that one. You can see here that there are 2 under the 3rd memory, and that's because Argus gifts me Ionos, who is my loyal and loved steed for many years. And then in a separate prompt, Argus discovered that I'm a vampire and swore that he would get me help. And so these both have to do with Argus, so I put it right there, didn't I? And so the thing about this game is you can only have 5 memories at a time. And if you need to input a new experience and you don't have a memory in which to slot it, you must clear a memory. Strike it through. Your character doesn't remember that anymore. You're an old vampire. Time is different for you. You've been progressing. You've been progressing through time and moving through time for so long, you're going to start forgetting things. And choosing what to forget and how that impacts you, I think, is really the meat of this game. And in fact, I don't even think I know, because the designer kind of states that very directly. Lean into that, because that's what the thrust of this game is about losing parts of yourself over time, and the struggle of time passage and memory loss. And so I've done 2 prompts so far, and I will tell you what they were. So the first one was that, and I'll let you read this as I talk. Maybe I'll do a dramatic reading out loud at some point. I don't know, man. Maybe I'll pay a voice actor, get like a Midjourney image up here. Sheesh. But look, the first prompt that I got was A loved one discovers your condition. They offer you some help. Mark a resource that shows that. And so Argus discovered that I was a vampire. He tells me, dog, we're going to find you a doctor. We're going to get you all fixed up. We'll put a heart back in your chest, sew it up. Probably there's a Tony Stark type around. We'll figure it out. Argus is a good dude. We love him so much. I hope nothing ever happens to him. Prompt 2. Aw, geez, Argus is dead, huh? We killed him. Oops. You know, sometimes you roll right into a prompt that hits you hard. And the prompt that I rolled into, which I'll get to how you determine prompts in just a sec, it's rolling dice. I don't need to put that off. You roll some dice. There's a little bit more to it, but we'll get there. The second prompt that I got was you kill a loved one to protect your secret. Strike them from the list and remove a resource because of it. And Argus wanted to tell Berenice what I was, and I very much did not want that. I think that Ambrose, like a lot of men in general, and certainly men of his time, is very prideful and does not want shame brought about. And I've sort of characterized this. You can see there's passing years here. I've sort of decided to characterize it as a very slow descent into vampirism rather than just like I've been bit and then now I'm going to suck your blood and sucks to suck blood. I wanted to sort of take some time. And so I did take some time. It took about 3 years for him to fully kind of get there. And even still, he's not quite there. But we're going to do kind of a big time jump here for the next one, where I think Ambrose is going to be on his own. I figure eventually he can't hide it anymore. I can't go out in the sun, eating blood all the time. And I can't hide that anymore. Eventually he's got to move along. And so he will. And so that's where we're going to pick up today. I don't think I'm actually going to record myself or hold on to the parts where I am actively writing. I think I'll probably take breaks and sort of address you guys and talk about what I'm thinking or what direction I'm trying to pull the story in and maybe end each episode. I think today we'll probably just do one prompt, but maybe end each episode with some direction, some audience interaction, if you will. I would love to hear from you about what direction you'd like to see the story go or something like that. So let's do that. So let me jump to the page that I know my prompt is on, just page 42 of this PDF. There we go. How do you find solace from the raging hunger within you? You may lose one checked or unchecked skill. Now that's interesting. You may lose a skill. I don't know that I want to, although narratively it is kind of interesting if I lose my ability to be charismatic, because I don't think I am anymore, at least not right now. I think I've got some stuff going on. So maybe that's worth losing. So it's tough. When I started writing this, I really wanted to stray away from a very conventional vampire story. And I think I've done that a little bit initially by sort of extending the length of time that it takes for him to fully be kind of consumed by this. So what does that mean when we talk about what he does to find solace from the raging hunger? I had written in the second entry that he tries to, in a very kind of common vampire thing, he tries killing animals. That doesn't work out. He tries killing, vagrants, people that he would view, not me necessarily, but he would view as having nothing, having no one, people that are unconnected. And I think he's just sort of been doing that. And I figure now it's been 6 years. I hope I'm right in remembering that BC counts up, right? Because you're counting to the point where Christ happens and then it's after death, right? It doesn't matter. We'll correct it as time goes on. So what does it mean for him to find solace? I think Ambrose as a person, probably at this point in time, is incredibly isolated. And so I wonder if for him, solace is wandering towns at night and just listening to people, listening to sort of like the joy and the life of the city. If he can sort of ignore the hunger to experience some sort of humanity, I feel like he's trying desperately to keep that part of him alive despite what he is. He kind of makes reference to the fact that Persian noble that turned him, Esfandiar, as telling him that he would become a monster inevitably and that there was nothing that he could ultimately do about that. But I think, like most people, he wants to sort of rage against the dying of that light. And I think for him, that looks like wandering amongst people who aren't afflicted in the way that he is and keeping a distance so that his hunger doesn't get the best of him, so that his thirst doesn't consume him, but that he can still sort of almost like... I remember one time I was really sick and I couldn't taste food, and it bummed me out because I'm fat and I like to eat. And I remember my girlfriend was eating pizza at the time, and I was like, can I just I just want to be close to it. You know what I mean? Maybe that's really sad. maybe that's a little bit of a self-report on the old doughboy here. But I think you can relate. It's sad when you can't taste your favorite things. It's sad when you can't engage in the activities that you've sort of taken for granted. And so, yeah, let's write about that a bit. We'll take a pause here, and I will do some writing, and I will resume when I have more to say or more to comment on, and we'll see where we go from there. We'll roll up our next prompt and, get on with this dang thing. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you in just a bit. Alrighty. Like 35 minutes later, and we have a couple paragraphs. Something that, and I'll show them in just a sec. I think I'll read them. Something that the book kind of challenges you to do is keep the entries fairly short to a couple paragraphs, which for me is both an advantage and a disadvantage. I have trouble writing for big chunks at a time. But also sometimes I find myself wanting to write much more and express much more. But I think keeping things dense and short challenges you to pack as much of a punch as you can in each sentence and in each idea that you're trying to convey. So before I get into what my thought process was while writing, I figure I'll just read you the thing real quick. I'll just read you the entry. Bear with me because I am not a dramatic reader by any means, but I think the point gets across. So let's take a listen. The bustle of the streets of Babylon is my only company now. My hearing is different these days, more focused, more discerning, more broad. And so I wander along the many moonlit cobblestone streets and dirt tracks, and I listen. I listen to the smeared blur of so many conversations overlapping. Listen to the arguments of lovers emanate from within their homes. Listen to the dreams of youths as they drape wistfully over the fountain in the center of the city. Listen to the quiet snores of the sleeping dog tied to his post. In my wanderings, I have also heard great violence. The city guard delivering their justice, battered women trapped behind closed doors, street-side thefts gone wrong. To walk through this city with my senses is to feel all of life at once. The love, the hate, the potential, the robbery thereof. Somehow it all soothes me, the writhing humanity. It ties me back to someone I have not been for many years now, to the people I loved and cherished for so long. Their deaths continue to haunt me, and yet I struggle to remember her voice. How did she call to me? How could I not remember? What did it feel like to be embraced by one's kin, to know love? I reach my mind's tendrils out, desperate to scrape some hint of the sensation from the walls of my memory, but it is in vain. Perhaps Esfendir tore more from me than my heart that night. I've fought for so long, but it has mayhaps all been decided ahead of me. What good can it be for a battlefield to be tread, if it is already strewn with the corpses and gristle, already torn asunder and left behind for the aeons to consume? What does one hope to achieve by traversing that landscape? What do I hope to make of this life when I have no life left to live? These questions have no answer, and so I walk into the dark, knowing I will never again see the light. Edgy, dude. Really dark. Really, very Shadow the Hedgehog of him. It's not perfect, but I don't think any of this is meant to be, right? I think the idea gets across that he is already sort of losing parts of himself in a very major way. I mean, it's been almost 10 years since he was turned at this point. And 10 years is a long time. It's not a long time in the scheme of a vampire, and I think that he will see that over the course of these prompts, right? I think that maybe he will look back and sort of laugh at how dramatic he's being already. I mean, already 10 years is the difference between being 10 and being 20. You know what I mean? Between being 20 and 30. You guys know how to count in numbers of 10. I don't know why I'm saying this to you, but like there's a vast span of time that can happen there. And like me personally, if I don't get hugged regularly, like after a month, I sort of start to forget what it feels like, and it sucks and it feels terrible. So like not being touched by another person for as long as he has been untouched by a person must feel miserable. And I think as he grows more comfortable, I don't think there's anything to say that he can't be touched. I think for now it's a hand being put up. I think it's his pride, but we'll just have to see kind of where he ends up with that as time continues its sort of inexorable course. And I imagine that these time jumps are going to get bigger and bigger as we progress. And on that note, actually, we will get to how we determine the next prompt for the story, which is to roll a d10 and a d6 and subtract the d6 from the d10. So let's do that. All right, 7 minus 5 is 2. So we jump 2 prompts. And because it's a positive number, we jump ahead. If this was a 7 and this was a 5, we would jump 2 prompts back. So let's go to prompt 13. Generations of the same family serve you. This line starts from any living mortal character or from the descendants of a dead mortal character. What bizarre rituals do they tie to their servitude? Lose a resource and create a servitors of the lineage resource. Interesting. Huh. Well, the only living mortals I have established is Cassander. So how does that work out? That they are the descendants of him. I wonder if I even know that. You can get into some kind of muddy and dark territory with marauding armies and the things that people had a tendency to do in that time. So it might be a descendant in a much different way than we would traditionally think. Or it could just literally be, he has a lot of kids. Not all of them are successful. One of them ends up, in a servile role and ends up with me. And I think this is going to be a big time skip because how does Ambrose go from kind of wandering the streets Batman style to having a mansion and having a family serve him Batman style? Yeah, interesting. I don't know. What do you guys think? I would love to hear what ideas you may have for who it is exactly is the descendant, what kind of person they are, where they came from, what their relationship is to me, and then how many generations we experience of that, and what bizarre rituals do they tie to their servitude. Interesting. And it leaves very vague what serve means. Like, the butler maid types, or are they like bringing me stuff? I think they might be bringing me stuff. I don't know. That's something else that we can decide. So first, what we're going to do is lose a resource. So let's do that. So resources, a strong marriage. Well, that is not the case anymore. Okay, so we lose a strong marriage, and just for simplicity's sake, I am going to cut, and paste this here. And then what we will do is enter a new resource, which is servitors. Dan can't type. Of the lineage. Okay. Interesting. And I think we will. Was it Alt-Shift-5? Yeah. We'll cross out that charismatic skill as well, because I do not believe he is charismatic anymore. And then we will also Thanos snap my wife from existence. I don't know necessarily that she's dead. I guess he did allude to their deaths, but I sort of wonder if he abandoned her and just assumes or hopes. I don't know. It's all very interesting. I like leaving the blanks because it gives us a lot of flexibility with what we want to do going forward. So I need to find a place to put this memory, and I assume it is going to go in my 5th memory slot here, which I need to sum up in a sentence or two, or actually just one sentence, I believe. So we'll say, I wander city streets for company. I am forgetting what it means to be human and loved. Very sad. And so now, if I want to put a third memory there, or a third experience rather, I have to put it in a fresh memory, and I have to tie it somehow to something else. And so, yeah, it might be worth, honestly, let's do this instead. Let's cut this, if I can effectively use a mouse here. Let's cut this. And I think what we can do is put this in the third memory, because it is tied to Argus. Argus is the person that I kill. So that kind of ties off that memory. And so when I need to erase that, I'm gonna forget Argus. And that's crazy to me, right? To think that you could live so long, you could forget a brother who was previously your best friend. Yeah, that's tough. But yeah, so I think we'll stop there. Very different content, very fun. I'm loving this as a writer and like a world builder and trying to kind of character develop. And I'm really stoked. I hope people like this, and I hope that people want to kind of be enthusiastic about joining in and throwing story ideas at me, because I think that could be a lot of fun. So anyway, I've talked long enough and I've kept you here long enough. I want to thank you so much for watching. Could have sat down with anybody on the whole dang internet this week, but you sat down with me, a guy pretending to be a vampire in Google Docs. And that, if you're hanging around, is awesome and crazy and cool. And so are you. Just cool, not crazy. You might be crazy. I don't know. But I thank you for it. Nevertheless, I will be back next week with a new video, potentially another one of these, potentially something different. I don't know. If you're a patron, there is a new video that has gone up, actually, of a couple friends and I building a world for a story that I'm writing that went really well, and we had a ton of fun playing this game called The Ground itself, which is fantastic. I should probably credit who designed this game, but I will do that in the next one. It's a guy with a name. I will put the link to his stuff down there to buy it. It's all fantastic. So in any case, yeah, patrons, go check that out. If you're not a patron yet and you want to support the things I do, please feel free to do so. It is appreciated more than I can say, especially now that this has become my day job, or the closest thing to it while I look for work. Yeah, I'm Daniel. This is my messy room and a messy desk, and I love you more than vampires love that blood, dude. I will see you next week. Peace.